Good morning and welcome to All Faiths Sunday service for June 14th. I'm the Reverend C.J. McGregor and I will lead the service this morning. I have a few announcements. There will be an animal shelter collection. Our regular fifth Sunday animal shelter collection was supposed to take place on Sunday, May 31st. However, it was canceled at that time. If you would like to drop off supplies for a new shelter in Cape Coral, you can bring them to All Faiths anytime during the week and leave them on the front porch. And Sharon Gray has volunteered to deliver the items. The Racial Justice Team will hold their regular monthly meeting via Zoom on Wednesday, June 17th at 10 o'clock in the morning. Stay tuned for an email regarding that. The Hearts for the Homeless Team will meet via Zoom on Tuesday, June 18th. They will meet on Tuesday, June 18th at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and they will also host an adult education presentation next Sunday, June 21st at 11:30 in the morning via Zoom, which the organizer from Angel Wings, which is temporary housing for women from the ages of 18 to 64 years old experiencing homelessness. The presentation will take place of coffee hour, and you will get an email with the Zoom link ahead of time, so watch for that. The Solos group will hold a Zoom luncheon on Saturday, June 20th at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. Newer members are encouraged to attend, and if you would like to be placed on the Solos email list, please contact Annalie Hudanik or the office. And you will also be receiving an email about that. This Sunday is Share the Plate Sunday, where we offer 10% of our collection to The Change, which is a program at the Alliance for the Arts, sponsored by our Racial Justice Team. Not the program, the collection. The easiest way, if you want to offer your donation to The Change, is to write a separate check and write The Challenge in the memo line. The Challenge at the Alliance for the Arts is a program for youth of color to participate in theater drama programs that they might not otherwise have an opportunity to. So please donate to that. At All Faiths, we want you to know that no matter who you are, wherever you are on your spiritual journey, and no matter whom you love, you are always welcome here. Please join in our opening hymn, Enter, Rejoice, and Come In. The Alliance for the Arts program that I spoke of is called The Change, not The Challenge. So please use The Change. Let us join together in reciting the words for our chalice lighting printed in our order of service. Rise up, O flame, by the light glowing, and show us beauty, vision, and joy.
stirrings of compassion, blowing the wind, rising the sea, moving the hand, giving life the shape of justice. Roots hold me close, wings set me free. Spirit of life, come to me, come to me.
Even when we are apart, we share our joys and sorrows. And this morning we have two sorrows. Kendra Maroon lost her aunt this past week, so please keep her and her family in our hearts. Nicole McDougall, her sister Taylor, who is 22, received some difficult news that is health related, so please keep her and her family in our hearts. If you'd like to share a joy or sorrow, you can contact me via email or text or phone, and I'll be glad to offer your joys and sorrows to the congregation. Let us share a few moments of silence. Our opening words this morning are from David Pohl. We come to this time and this place to rediscover the wondrous gift of free religious community, to renew our faith in holiness, goodness, and in the beauty of life, to reaffirm the way of the open mind and full heart, to rekindle the flame of memory and hope, and to reclaim the vision of an earth made fair with all of her people one. It is good to be together. Our reading this morning is titled An Ideal of Service to Our Fellow Man by Albert Einstein. This reading is an excellent example of Unitarian Universalist theology. Einstein writes, "The most beautiful thing we can experience is the mysterious, the knowledge of the existence of something unfathomable to us, the manifestation of the most profound reason coupled with the most brilliant beauty. I cannot imagine a God who rewards and punishes the objects of his creation, or who has a will of the kind we experience in ourselves. I am satisfied with the mystery of life's eternity and with the awareness of and glimpse into the marvelous construction of the existing world, together with the steadfast determination to comprehend a portion, be it ever so tiny, of the reason that manifests itself into nature. This is the basis of cosmic religiosity, and it appears to me that the most important function of art and science is to awaken this feeling among the receptive and to keep it alive. I sense that it is not the state that has intrinsic value in the machinery of humankind, but rather the creative, feeling individual, the personality alone that creates the noble and the sublime. Man's ethical behavior should be effectively grounded on compassion, nurture, and social order, and social bonds. What is moral is not of the divine, but rather a purely human matter, albeit the most important of all human matters. In the course of history, the ideals pertaining to human beings' behavior toward each other and pertaining to the preferred organization of their communities have been espoused and taught by enlightened individuals. These ideals and convictions, results of historical experience, empathy, and the need for beauty and harmony, have usually been willingly recognized by human beings, at least in theory. The highest principles for our aspirations and judgments are given to us Westerners in the Jewish Christian religious tradition. It is a very high goal, free and responsible development of the individual, so that he may place his powers freely and gladly in the service of all mankind. The pursuit of recognition for its own sake, an almost fanatical love of justice, and the quest for personal independence from the traditional themes of the Jewish people, of which I am a member. But if one holds these high principles clearly before one's eyes and compares them with the life and spirit of our times, then it is glaringly apparent that mankind finds itself at present in grave danger. I see the nature of the current crisis in the juxtaposition of the individual to society. The individual feels more than ever dependent on society, but he feels this dependence not in the positive sense, cradled, connected as part of the organic whole. He sees it as a threat to his natural rights and even his economic existence. His position in society, then, is such that which drives his ego is encouraged and developed, and that which would drive him toward other men, a weak impulse to begin with, it's left to atrophy. It is my belief that there is only one way to eliminate these evils, namely the establishment of a planned economy coupled with an education geared towards social goals. Alongside the development of individual abilities, the education of the individual aspires to revive an ideal that is geared toward the service of our fellow man and that needs to take the place of the glorification of power and outer success. And so ends the reading. Please join in hymn number 318, We Would Be One. The lyrics are printed on the bottom of your order of service. first time I learned about empathy, I was in the 2nd grade, and I went to a Catholic school, and Sister Elizabeth Ann introduced me to the New Testament story of the Good Samaritan. And the parable of the Good Samaritan is a parable told by Jesus in the Gospel of Luke. It is about a traveler who is stripped of clothing, beaten, and left half dead alongside the road. First, a priest and then a Levite comes by, but both avoid the man, and finally, a Samaritan happens upon the traveler. Samaritans and Jews despise each other, but the Samaritan helps the injured man anyway. And Jesus is described as telling this parable in response to the question asked by a lawyer. And the question was, who is my neighbor? And in response, Jesus tells this parable, and the conclusion of which is that the neighbor figure in the parable is the man who shows mercy to the injured man. That is the Samaritan, the Good Samaritan. Empathy, I believed, meant being able to understand or relate to the suffering of others, and how to respond to it, doing something to help. Empathy was the ultimate virtue, one that equips you to enter the pain of another person. But is that true? And lately I've been rethinking empathy and compassion and its relationship to compassion, specifically which is better, which is a better response, empathy or compassion. And my struggle to define these words took on real life weight. And I remembered when I traveled to New Orleans a few times after Hurricane Katrina, and I arrived with the group expecting to help residents of the 9th Ward clean up. If they didn't have their properties cleaned by a certain deadline, their homes would be bulldozed. And I arrived to do cleanup, but it turned out that I would actually be doing human rights work. People were trying to bring their communities back, but were met with roadblocks from the local and federal government, unnecessary roadblocks from the local and federal government. You see, the 9th Ward was home to many African Americans and some of the poorest in New Orleans. Their lives were at risk of being bulldozed, losing their property, their home, their dignity, their rights. And as I learned about the burdens they carried, my empathy seemed hugely inadequate. If empathy means understanding what someone else is going through, it can't get us very far. No matter how good my imagination or how deep my sympathy, I'll truly never understand the people, what the people of the 9th Ward in New Orleans were up against. I can't know what it's like to grow up in a poor black community and be pounded with inhumanity. I just can't know that. And to claim otherwise seems dangerous. It seems like appropriation, taking on another person's suffering when we haven't earned the right to do that. Suffering is a universal experience and is integral to living. While there are many causes for suffering, the theme of loss in all its forms seems to be a common denominator. Each person experiences loss in a different way, and suffering, therefore, is idiosyncratic. One of the best definitions of suffering, I think, suggests that it is an unpleasant experience which arises from the perceptions of impending destruction of an individual's personhood. An unpleasant experience which arises from perceptions of impending destruction of another person's personhood. Suffering continues in our lives until the disintegration has passed or the integrity of the person is restored. We know people are suffering by their demeanor and by what they say. In keeping with the definition, people often describe themselves as broken, shattered, or fallen into pieces. It is important to realize that suffering affects the whole person. Suffering also challenges our particular worldview, and many throw it into chaos, the very meaning and purpose of our lives. Responding to suffering, therefore, will often need a spiritual response, such as compassion. And this doesn't mean that empathy isn't good or necessary. It is, but I think compassion is better. Compassion is better. And sometimes I'm sorry is a more loving response than saying, hey, me too. I've experienced that too. And several years ago, Leslie Jameson published a collection of essays called The Empathy Exams. It's worth a read. In the opening essay, she writes, empathy is always perched precariously between gift and an invasion. And by this, I think she means that empathy requires a big dose of humility and knowing that you do not know. It requires close listening and attention. It requires asking to hear people's stories, especially people who don't often get to share their stories. She writes, you're just a tourist inside someone else's suffering until you can't get it out of your head, until you take it home with you across the freeway or a country or an ocean. Another way to say this is empathy can stall out at tourism or, worse, voyeurism, unless it leads you into compassion. To be good, empathy must lead you into compassion. While empathy is important, it shouldn't be our end goal. And that's where compassion comes in, a gift that takes empathy one step further. And the Latin roots of the word mean to suffer together. And I think this is the key to our understanding of compassion. Compassion is only possible and effective when we see ourselves poor and wounded. We can only suffer with others if we understand that we are equally in need of healing. And Jesuit priest Gregory Boyle writes, compassion is not a relationship between the healer and the wounded. It's a covenant between equals. The story of the Good Samaritan, the good news in the New Testament that tells us we are both broken and healed, makes compassion not just possible, but makes compassion likely. It makes it out our daily stance. And defining empathy and compassion is not an either or an or question. Empathy can lead us into compassion, and compassion can lead us into solidarity. As journalist Krista Tippett put it, compassion is rarely a solution, but it is always a sign of a deeper reality. Standing in solidarity with those who suffer won't take away their pain, but it can point to all that is good and remind us that we suffer together. We suffer with one another. One of our most difficult and confronting tasks as human beings is to respond effectively to those who are suffering. Sensitivity and gentleness on our part may play a crucial role in transforming brokenness and suffering into wholeness and healing. Yet, despite our sincere and best intentions to help, inappropriate responses may sometimes only make someone's suffering worse. It's important to have some understanding of yourself when responding to suffering, having an idea of what makes you tick, about your strengths and your vulnerabilities, maybe even your prejudices. What negative experiences have you had in your life and feelings that might be triggered when you talk to someone who is sick or helpless or suffering? How might these feelings from long ago influence what you say and do in the present when you visit that person? We must avoid attempting to fix the suffering. Simply be present. I recall what the suffering Jesus asked of his disciples. He said, watch with me. He didn't say, give me advice or make me feel better. He just said, be there. And this can be a most difficult step. And being attentive with deep and active listening is our aim. We need to listen with our hearts as well as with our ears. What is the person feeling? Practice listening to not only what is being said, but also to how it's being said. Get used to sitting in silence. Listen with curiosity to those stories that people need to tell you. Allow them to lament. Be prepared to hear many unanswerable questions, especially, why has this happened? That's a very common question that I get all the time. Why has this happening? Why is this happening? Why did this happen to me? And our role is to sit in the pain with the other. When the unanswerable questions come, respond to the questioner, not the question. People who suffer do not need a lecture or a philosophical dissertation. They need compassion. Let the other know that you are a witness to their plight. There's clearly much more that could be said and written about how best to respond to suffering, and it's often a difficult job, especially when our natural tendency is to be doing something for someone, to be fixing something for someone. Remember that our role in responding to suffering ultimately is to nurture and sustain others from brokenness and move them towards healing. And as we respond to suffering, we become like a midwife, present to and mindfully aware of the other as people journey from one experience of life to the other, from anguish to peace, from fear to love, from death to new life. And so let our hearts, our minds, and our arms be stretched wide and open with compassion. Let us be the healers. Let us respond to suffering, making people whole once again. May it be so. A drunken man staggers into a Catholic church. He enters a confessional booth, sits down, but says nothing. And the priest on the other side coughs a few times to get his attention, but the man continues to sit there. And finally the priest pounds on the wall 3 times. And the drunken man mumbles, "There's no use of knocking. There's no paper on this side either." We are grateful for your offering to support the work of this congregation.
Behind every fear there's a lie told. Spend most of my life trying to let go. The more you love, the more you bleed. Some days will be harder than others, so we gotta lean on each other. Hands in the air, hearts on our sleeve. We're living in a world unfair. We're living in a world so scared. I'm gonna be fearless, fearless. I'm brave enough to feel this, feel this. I'm running down my demons, demons. No doubts around it, I finally found it. Now I'm fearless, fearless. I never thought I'd feel this, feel this. I finally believe it, believe it. No doubts around it, I finally found it. I can't be myself if I'm hiding, and if I'm not living, I'm dying. I can't feel what I don't know. I'm tearing apart all the labels, throwing my luck on the table, and if I lose, I won't go home. We're living in a world unfair. We're living in a world so scared. I wanna be fearless, fearless. I'm brave enough to feel this, feel this. I'm running down my demons, demons. No doubts around it, I finally found it. Now I'm fearless, fearless. I never thought I'd feel this, feel this. I finally believe it, believe it. No doubts around it, I finally found it. Holy Ghost, don't ever let it go. I can feel
If you have found freedom this morning, take it with you into the world. If you have found comfort, go and share it. Share it with others. If you have dreamed dreams, help one another that they may come true. If you have known love, give some back to this bruised and hurting world. Blessed be.
When there's nowhere else to run, is there room for one more song? One more song. If you can't hold on, if you can't hold on, hold on.
I'd like to thank Ed Elrod, who is on sound this morning, Regina Kilmartin, who is our camera person and director, and of course Joseph, who brings us our music. And I'd also like to thank you for joining us this morning. Please join in the words printed in your order of service as I extinguish the chalice. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts and out into the world.